Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, December 23rd. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 454 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. It's another Monday after a loss, our 11th loss of the season, 4-11 on the year. And we've got a lot to get into today on the podcast, breaking down some more numbers from yesterday's performance. I also want to get to some quotes from Garrett Wilson and just the whole Garrett Wilson situation on its own, which has obviously been something that's been talked about a lot over the last couple days here from Wilson's or from the Samini podcast that said that people close to Wilson believe he'll request a trade, from him making some comments kind of seeming uncertain about his future when he met the media this week, and then his low amount of targets in yesterday's game where he had some comments, potentially comments maybe directed towards Rodgers. We'll get into all that, the whole Garrett Wilson situation. Whether or not you should be worried, panic, whatever, as a Jet fan. And, of course, some more takeaways just from the loss yesterday. Apologize for this being a little bit of a later episode. Probably won't be up until about 7:15-ish as I'm recording this at 6:30 Eastern. I'm a Rangers fan, was at the Rangers-Devils game today. Disaster, 5-0 shutout. So for your Ranger Jet fans out there, it's a really rough day between the Jets losing, Rangers losing. I know a lot of Jet fans are Islanders fans. If you're a Jets-Devils combination, then it's a good day for you. Devils win. Rangers are a disaster, 16-17-1 on the season. Don't need to go down the whole list. We all know it, but this is the Jets podcast, so don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into our podcast partners as we always do, starting with our good friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sports book. At sign up, you click the link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Obviously, college football playoff in full swing. You've got NBA, NHL in full swing as well. Of course, 2 more weeks of the NFL season before the playoffs. So much action to get in on. Click my link in the description and head on over to BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. You know the drill. If it's your first time using SeatGeek and you're looking to get out to any sporting events, plays, concerts, shows, look for the green dots. Those are the good deals. And at checkout, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. And, of course, Huga House, if you want any of their awesome selection of hats, check them out. Promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase. And then when you use that promo code, you get your second half 30% off. So definitely capitalize on those offers. Get yourself some swag. And, of course, help support the podcast as well. So here we are, another one of these Mondays, another Monday after a loss. Last week was kind of a 1-week break, right? They pick up the win against Jacksonville, and then fast forward a week later, and we're back here talking about a Jets loss that was kind of along the same, I guess, border of the same losses that we've seen all year. Bad coaching, bad clock management, couple turnovers, a whole lot of penalties, good first half, poor second half, couldn't make field goals, couldn't make extra points, kind of everything that we've seen from this Jets team all year. There was a lot of that in yesterday's game where they just continue to hurt themselves, continue to shoot themselves in the foot. And thank goodness we only have 2 games left. You know, just getting up this morning and thinking about this team and hearing everybody else's takes and just scrolling through Twitter and even just scrolling through, you know, all the different sports apps and seeing the updated playoffs and all that stuff, man, it's another one of these days as a Jet fan, you know, even yesterday. And I think that's why maybe yesterday got so frustrated, even though I'm kind of a numb fan where win or lose at this point in the year, you're so emotionally just broken down as a fan that you're just looking forward to the offseason. Win or lose, these games don't really affect you at this point. You're just waiting for the season to end, number one, and number two, who the next GM and head coach is going to be. But you continue to see all this playoff stuff. You continue to see some of these big matchups coming up, And you even see some of these teams, right? Like Washington going out there, big win yesterday. You even see Denver now fighting down the stretch here for a playoff spot. They've got to win pretty much one more game and they can get in. It's just another one of these days, another one of these weeks as a Jet fan where you just want to, just wonder, when is it finally going to be our time where we're going to be sitting here 2 days before Christmas and a day before Christmas Eve talking about winning a division? When are we finally going to get to a situation where, as opposed to going up to Buffalo for this week's game, week 17, going up to Buffalo as a 4-11 team, when are we going to go up to Buffalo and have that game mean something where we can win the division or take over the division or clinch a playoff, right? I know we got that opportunity, of course, in 2015, and it failed miserably, going up there and losing and missing out on the playoffs at 10-6. But this was supposed to be the year, and it hasn't been, and it's just so annoying continuing to have to watch this, talk about it here, and seeing all these other teams jump us. It's not just teams like Houston who's now having success. Of course, Detroit, Washington, all these teams that were in the basement just a couple years ago that have turned it around. But even now, a team like Denver, even more recently, they had the longest drought besides us for the playoffs. And now that's probably going to end this year as well. So another one of these days where you wonder when this is all going to finally be over and we're going to be able to talk about a playoff berth. And I'm not even talking about what we got in 2022 when they were 7-4 and then they collapsed. I'm talking about where this time of year they're fighting or they're already in, and we're talking about, whether or not to rest or play the players, rest the starters in the final week of the season. Maybe that's getting too greedy, but you get the point. Not to go on a long rant here. Want to kind of keep this short and sweet. I want to get to some Garrett Wilson stuff. Obviously, that's been a big topic, a big story. Yesterday you go out there, kind of watching that game. Even this morning was just watching back some of the film back this morning just to see some of the Aaron Rodgers throws and what seemed like watching it on TV where he was forcing it to Devontae ended up being that kind of really being the case. And you go back and watch this game, you go back and rewatch parts of it, especially the one red zone play, that 1 4th down. A couple of the plays where it felt like Rodgers was just trying to force it to Devontae, get him to have a big game and get his 500 touchdown to his boy. Garrett was open a lot, running open a lot. Couple plays where they had chances to get the ball to Garrett. Rodgers either didn't see him or was just so dead set on throwing it to Davante Adams to try and get him his 500th touchdown that every other player on the field didn't really mean anything to him. And it was one of those days yesterday for Garrett Wilson. And I know when you look at Garrett Wilson's whole body of numbers, he's been great this year, right? 90 receptions, 987 yards, 6 touchdowns, all that great stuff. But then you have some of these games where it's hot, cold. There's some games where he gets targeted a lot, has a big day. And then there's games like yesterday where he's running wide open. And it's like the Aaron Rodgers show, basically Rodgers doing whatever the heck he wants to try and get his 500 touchdown. And while Garrett finished yesterday with 6 catches on 7 targets, he had 3 targets until in the first 55 minutes of the game. So it wasn't until the final 5 minutes of the game where the Jets were pretty much out of it, garbage time, where Aaron Rodgers was throwing short, quick passes to Garrett Wilson. And that's why you look at the box score and it shows, 6 targets. You think to yourself, man, what is he complaining about? He only had 1 less reception. Devontae had 54 yards. He caught 6 of his 7 targets, all that stuff. Well, the big problem was Devontae got 13 targets yesterday. A lot of, you can make the case 2 or 3 of the targets to Devontae should have gone to Garrett Wilson. And the fact was, Garrett Wilson, your star wide receiver, your number 1 threat, your best player on offense by a lot, had 3 targets in the first 55 minutes. That's inexcusable. And you can understand the frustration from Garrett Wilson. And I don't even think all this frustration from Garrett Wilson is coming from the targets. I think a lot of it is also just coming from losing. He's sick and tired of losing, just like the rest of us. And yesterday only added fuel to an already raging fire that is his possible trade request that has been speculated in rumor that will happen when this season officially comes to a close, right? It started with the Rich Cimini podcast report earlier this week that said he's talked to people close to Garrett Wilson. They think he'll request a trade. Then when Wilson spoke to the media, I believe on Thursday, said that when they asked him about his future and all that stuff, he's like, I don't know. He kind of gave the old cliche of, I don't know, I'm where my feet are, I'm focused on this week, all that stuff, but didn't give a definitive answer one way or another. And then you go out there this week, you hear some of his post-game comments, and yeah, they're not great. And do you blame them? They're lost again. It was like the Aaron Rodgers do what the heck you want show, and he had 3 targets in the first 55 minutes, and that's inexcusable. Good teams find ways to get their best talent involved early and often. And too many times this year do you see Jet games go by where it's just Rodgers to Devontae and not a whole lot else. And does it surprise you that that type of game plan, that type of football that we saw only generated 9 points? No. No, it doesn't. That's not how modern NFL offenses are run. Force feeding it to one guy so you can try and get your 500th touchdown to your best friend. And yeah, I'm talking about you, Rodgers. So here was Garrett's comments on his lack of targets.
You were not involved much until late in the fourth quarter. Why was
I don't know. To be honest with you, man, I don't know. I just got to go out and put my best foot forward, and hope that things fall my way. I would love to be involved, love to make an impact on the game, but people see it differently than that's outside of my control. So just try and do what I can do.
So there was Garrett on his lack of opportunities yesterday. Interesting that he says people see it differently. You wonder if he's sort of taking a jab at Rodgers there. I don't know if I'm looking into it too much, but definitely an interesting line to take away from an otherwise frustrated comment from a frustrated wide receiver. Other than that, just talk about is the lack of explosives this year from the Jets on offense has been alarming. And yesterday they had one play over 20 yards, one pass play over 20 yards, and that was the first drive. It was a ball to Conklin, who actually had a good day yesterday. One of his better games of the season. I still think Conklin's best game was against New England, right? But outside of New England game, he's been pretty much a non-factor. The tight end room as a whole has been a pretty much non-factor. And if we're being honest, the tight end room needs a complete overhaul. You're looking at maybe drafting a tight end this year. But there's only added fuel. Now, here's the whole Garrett Wilson and trade request thing. Do I think Garrett Wilson's going to get traded? No. Do I think the Jets should trade him? Definitely not. Do I think Garrett requests to trade? I think it's becoming increasingly more likely, but I do think there's a lot of Jet fans out there that are taking some of the whole Garrett thing out of context, where he can request a trade. It doesn't mean he's going to get traded. It doesn't mean the Jets have to trade him, right? We've seen this happen a lot with receivers where they request trades and then the team ends up offering him a contract and they make amends and they figure it out, right? Garrett, I don't think he'd be requesting a trade over just the money. That's not the case, but I think he's more so going to be requesting a trade because of the losing, because he probably wants to, move on from like the losing and all that stuff here, all the revolving doors, the lack of consistent quarterback play. We get all that. Even Rodgers this year, he's obviously had a lot of highs, a lot of lows. There's been moments where him and Garrett have connected, and then there's been moments where they haven't, similar to yesterday. But I still think this is, again, what makes it so huge. I still believe Garrett will be out there week 1, 2025. I don't think he was going to get traded. I think ideal scenario here is for the Jets, and what makes this coaching hire, again, so important is you go out, you hire the right coach. Let's say you go out and hire Vrabel, bring in the right guy that day one instantly comes in here, instantly comes in, gets the respect of the locker room. Garrett Wilson immediately believes. You get that guy, the whole trade request, all that stuff's going to go right out the window, because then he's going to have belief in a coach. He's going to have belief in the system that they're building, and then you can extend him, and then you can then you head into the right direction. But I think a lot of what Garrett Wilson will do, a lot of what's going to happen with even some of these other young guys, some of these players in general, is who they hire. If they hire some first-time guy, then you might see Garrett request a trade because it's like, hey, I heard this guy speak. I heard this guy talk. This is the same thing that we saw. We just got over this, and now we're going back into it. But you bring in Vrabel, you can't tell me if you bring in Mike Vrabel and the Jets offer Garrett Wilson a huge contract extension, 4 years, $100 million plus, that he's not going to want to stay here. He will then end up staying here. The Jets just have to execute the right head coach, bring him in. Garrett sees that, sees a proven guy, buys into him day one. You give him a contract, and you'll get this worked out. That's how you avoid the whole trade request, trade scenario. Is Garrett's probably going to wait. Who's the coach that we hire? He's probably got a list. He's probably got guys that he likes, guys that he believes can come in here and fix this thing. And if they bring in a guy like Vrabel, well-respected, proven guy, you could see a world where the Jets bring him in, right general manager, right head coach, locker room, day one, instant accountability, instant buy-in, and then you can go on and extend him and avoid an ugly situation. But they got to get the hire right. They don't get the hire right, that's where things are going to get ugly. Then you're going to get a trade request. You might not even want a guy that's going to want to be here long term. So, again, the importance of this coaching hire continue to loom large. 2 more games left, and we can start to really figure out who they are going after, who's going to be the coach, how hot each of these names are. There's always surprising names that come through. So we got 13 days until that happens. But that's what it ultimately comes down to. Now, I read some of these stats on the post-game show, and this will be one more thing until I close this out. I read yesterday on the post-game show about 2 stats that, of course, Rich Zamini posted and kind of just encapsulate the Jets season in the game yesterday. And I wanted to read you those again, just in case if you all forgot or you didn't hear. Yesterday was just the second time since 1940 that a team has not punted in a game and failed to score at least 10 points. The other came on September 1st, 1991, when the Colts lost 16-7 to the Patriots. The 1991 Colts finished 1-15, their only win being over the Jets. Another stat, the Jets have lost 6 straight games in which they outgained their opponent, unless they outgained their opponent this season. They're 1-6 on the season. The longest single-season drought since 2020-2021 Jaguars, 9 straight games. So, brutal. The Jets always find, they literally invent new ways to lose. And there was a stat I remember after that Patriots loss. It was something like the Jets were the first team to have 220 plus passing yards, or I forget what it was. No turnovers and 20 plus points or something and still lose or something like that. They were like the first team in NFL history. Like previous teams were like 0-256 or something. And the Jets were the first team to lose, or I don't know, 0-79, I forget. And the Jets, even against Seattle, Rodgers never in his career, I think, was 79-0 with when he had a 2-score lead at home. And they had a 14-0 lead. They found a way to blow it, and then he was 79-1. And I believe the Jets themselves, it was like their first time they blew a 2-score lead at home in like a decade or something. I could probably pull the stats up, but it was just something crazy like that. I mean, it is just ridiculous. Some of these things, they're just so ridiculous. It's crazy. They're ridiculous, some of these stats. And it just shows you how incompetent this team is. Incompetent. Everything that could have went wrong this year has gone wrong. Right? We went into the year wondering how this coaching staff was going to be. It's gone wrong. Would the defense regress with guys like Bryce Huff gone, JFM, all those pieces gone? It has regressed. Like everything that could have gone wrong this season has gone wrong. The only thing that I think hasn't gone wrong this year that could have gone wrong, or that was maybe going into the season as one of the things that could go wrong, is Rodgers' health. And I know he's been banged up, but going into the year, in the back of your mind, you always feared, like, what if he goes down again and it's a major injury or all that stuff? Right? That was like one of the major fears. That's the only thing that really hasn't gone wrong. I know, of course, he hasn't been healthy a lot, but he's been healthy enough to play. I'm talking about another major injury. It's just another one of these things where it's only the Jets. If you would have told us Rodgers plays 17 games and this team still finds a way to win 4 games, right, or whatever they're going to win. I don't think they win next week against Buffalo. I think they have a chance against Miami, but I don't know. This team's like it's maybe they just, I don't know. That Miami game is going to be really, really interesting to see what the heck happens. I think it could go either way. They're not beating Buffalo 100%. So at best, they're a 5-win team, but you get the point. I don't want to ramble anymore. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. We'll actually probably have a podcast up because I do believe Ulbrich speaks to the media tomorrow. So we'll probably have an update on Olu. So we'll probably have a video on that and any other injury updates. I also want to get a video out on 3 head coaching candidates that I would avoid if I'm the New York Jets. So we can get that video out probably maybe tomorrow as well. Some other notes I wanted to get to just on how likable this destination is and all that stuff. Some reports that have come out on that actually is positively favors the Jets, that this is a destination that a lot of people actually want. So we'll get to that as well. So look for a potential pod tomorrow. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. And as always, until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.